It's been a long time since I used that fishing rod. If I'd been just a little bit more sensible, I'd still be using it today. Listening to safety talks is certainly not new to any one of you. Hard for me to remember my thoughts a few years ago as I sat high school and not me. The thought of being in a car accident occurred to me at times, but in each case, I pictured myself being miraculously thrown clear, or somehow receiving nothing more serious than a scratched hand. I think it is this idea that these things just won't happen to us that give many drivers a false sense of security. I don't think most drivers realize how much they rely on this "it can't happen to me" or "I'll be lucky" type of thinking. I know this was certainly true in my case. Perhaps if I were to tell you a little about my accident and what happened to me, you could get a better understanding of how I held to this type of thinking and just how disillusioning it can be. Let's go back to a beautiful summer day some years ago. A friend of mine had invited me to spend a weekend at his parents' cottage a few hundred miles up north, and called for me about 11 in the morning. After packing a few things, like tackle boxes and fishing rods, we took off with visions of big walleyes, maybe even a muskie or two. We were in a big hurry to wet our lines, and my friend hit the accelerator pretty hard. But although we were riding in a late model convertible and the highway was relatively clear of traffic, I still felt we were traveling too fast. I remember that I was sitting next to the driver, with my knees drawn up on the seat, and my back was against the right front door. But like most people, rather than seem afraid, I just hoped we'd be lucky and nothing would happen. Although I wasn't watching the road, I was told about it later. Another car was approaching the highway from the right. Then it happened. When I finally stopped rolling, I was lying on my back looking straight up at the sky. And I remember I had such a wonderful feeling of relief that I thanked God for not being hurt. Aside from a slight pain in the back of my neck and a little trouble breathing, I thought I had luckily pulled through, unhurt. For a few seconds, I just lay there, saying thank you over and over, until I noticed my right hand lying on my chest was bleeding. I went to move my arm, but to my surprise, I couldn't move my hand off my chest. I was momentarily shocked, but then I thought perhaps I'd broken my arm so that I couldn't move it. Just then, I heard my name being called.
Dave! Dave, where are you?
It was then that I tried to get up. It was a combination of disbelief and terror that passed through me when, try as I would, I just could not move. I couldn't even turn my head from side to side.
Dave! Hey, Dave! If you hear me, answer, will you?
I thought he was hurt and calling for my help. I tried to answer him, but wasn't able to speak louder than a whisper. My mouth was full of dirt, and I couldn't seem to spit it out. Just then, I saw him standing over me. I learned later that by hanging onto the steering wheel, he had managed to stay in the car and had pulled through without so much as a scratch.
Hey, Dave, you okay? Say something, will you?
I tried to talk to him, but found it difficult to force any words out. He told me to lie still while he got someone to call an ambulance. I had to lie still. I had no choice. seemed like only a matter of minutes before a large crowd of people had circled around. The pain in the back of my neck began to hurt me more, so I kept my eyes closed most of the time. But I could hear people in the crowd saying,
"Oh, that poor kid."
Oh, look at him.
This really frightened me, because hard as I tried, I couldn't see any part of my body, except the hand on my chest, and for all I knew, I had lost a leg. I must have tried to move 100 times, but the only thing I could move were my eyes. I heard someone in the distance, sort of an eerie someone, with a disembodied voice.
Is he dead? Is that poor boy dead?
I remember opening my eyes and looking around to prove not only to the crowd, but to myself that I was still alive. It was a short time after this that I felt a hand on my forehead. I opened my eyes and saw a priest bending over me. He began saying some prayers, which I soon realized were last rites. Well, you can imagine the terrible scare this gave me, because up until this time, I realized that something strange had happened to me, but I certainly didn't think I was going to die. Shortly after this priest had given me last rites, a minister tried to help. After what seemed like an eternity, though actually only about 20 minutes, I heard the ambulance coming. It was really a relief when the ambulance attendants lifted me on the stretcher and I caught a glimpse of my legs and saw that I still had both of them. This may sound silly, but that ride in the ambulance, even with the flashing lights and siren to clear the way, was the most frightening ride I've ever had. It seemed as though we were going so fast, and I had just experienced how fast things could happen, that had I been able, I'm sure I would have asked them to slow down. At the hospital, they laid me on a table and cut off my shirt and trousers. The doctor then did what I thought was a strange thing. He took a pin, told me he was going to start picking me with it, and that I was to tell him when I felt any of the pin pricks. He began at my feet and continued up my body. It wasn't until he reached my chin that I was able to feel any of the pinpricks. He then asked for my phone number and the name of my doctor in Green Bay. I knew he was going to call my parents, so I told him to wait a few minutes until I'd caught my breath, that I was sure I'd be all right. And then I would call them, because I knew that if I called, that somehow I could minimize the whole thing. He then told me that I had fractured my neck and that it was best that he call them now. While they were putting through the call, I was moved to another room where they placed a halter-like device over my head, to which they attached some weights. As I lay there, I thought of many things. I thought about my friend speeding, and I was inclined to put all the blame on him. But I realized that I was just as much at fault as he. If I'd had the nerve to make him slow down, well, It was too late to think about those things now. I lay there like that, with my neck in traction, until later that evening, to remove the halter and shave the hair off my head. Then he proceeded to drill 2 holes in my skull, one on each side of my head. When he started drilling, all kinds of wild thoughts occurred to me. I had just finished a course in sociology, where we'd learned that in certain extreme mental cases, that the doctor had been forced to remove part of the brain so as to make the patient more docile. And I thought perhaps they thought there was something mentally wrong with me. But as it turned out, these holes were used to anchor a tongue-like instrument to my head, enabling them to keep my neck in traction without pulling on my chin. At this point, with all the drilling, combined with the pain in my neck and overall weakness, I was inclined to believe that last rites had been in order after all. What happened in the next 4 to 5 weeks is not quite clear to me, as I was under heavy sedation. Although I do remember that the next day they did something to the back of my neck. I was told later that they had been forced to operate because the traction alone had failed to straighten out my spinal cord. I was in this tongue type of traction for exactly 4 weeks. After what seemed like an eternity, they removed these tongs and placed me in a neck brace. Then I was transferred to a Green Bay hospital. After 2 weeks in Green Bay, they removed this neck brace, and I was happy to find that I was able to turn my head from side to side, but I was still unable to move any part of my body below my neck. But I was confident that at least by Christmas time, I would be up and walking around. In October, I was transferred to the rehabilitation department of the Mayo Clinic at Rochester, Minnesota. It was at Mayo's that I was finally told the truth about my chances of recovery. I can still hear the doctor's words.
David, you'll have to know sometime. Although there are rare exceptions in cases like yours, I'm afraid you can't expect much more use of your body than you have right now.
All I had, and all I could expect to have, was partial recovery of my arms and shoulders. I was at Mayo's a little more than a year. During that time, I exercised the remaining muscles in my arms and shoulders and had 4 operations on my hands so as to enable me to grasp things, feed myself, things that I used to take for granted. Yes, it's been a long road back, both for me and my parents. It seems impossible for me to list all the far-reaching effects of such an accident, not only for me, but for my parents. I could cite the thousands and thousands of dollars of hospital and medical expense, or what I feared would be my poor employment possibilities, as just some of the many problems that just begin with my dismissal from the hospital a year and a half after the accident. Of course, there were many things that I would never be able to do again, and the things that I could do had to be done differently. I learned to drive a car with the aid of special equipment that requires only the use of my arms and shoulders. I firmly believe that had I been wearing a seatbelt, I would be up and walking around today. A seatbelt is standard equipment for me now. And believe me, I drive defensively. By defensive driving, I mean the anticipation and recognition of danger, teaching yourself to be ready to avoid danger at any second. In other words, defensive driving is always expecting the unexpected and being prepared to spot danger in plenty of time to avoid it. The defensive driver is actually driving 5 cars. The first car, of course, is your own. Then there's that car up ahead to watch out for, as well as the car behind you, plus the one on the left and the one on the right. It is just as important as defensive driving. To avoid an accident like mine, the passenger should and must speak out when the driver becomes incautious. Remember, the really skillful driver is a careful driver. To drive defensively and ride defensively is to drive and ride with confidence and to avoid the things that happened to me. My case is just one of the hundreds of thousands seriously injured each year. When I read some of the unbelievable statistics, like one person being seriously injured every 22 seconds, I can't help but think of those seriously injured in car accidents who wish that they could just one more chance to be well on this time. They would replace this "it can't happen to me" or "I'll be lucky" type of thinking with the much more reliable "I won't take chances, I'll drive defensively and ride defensively" kind of thinking. Unfortunately, we don't get another chance. But all of you still have a chance to live a normal life and enjoy any or all of the wonderful things the world has to offer. It's been a long road back for me, and a long road still ahead. But if my experience can inspire you to always drive and ride with common sense and never take a chance, it will be a happy road with the best yet to come.
Washington, D.C. John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, names David Hall of Green Bay, Wisconsin, America's Handicapped Man of the Year. This coveted presidential award is in recognition of young Mr. Hall's courageous comeback following his tragic automobile accident and his dedicated crusade to help others avoid the mistakes that led to his own terrible handicap. America's Handicapped Men of the Year, David Hall.